Needed an old pro to help out with this.
There's a lot of enforcement.
Give me a gavel.
All right.
No wonder you haven't been here.
Welcome everyone. First order of business tonight to get the meeting started. Since we don't have a chair or a vice chair in attendance today, the way to resolve that is to appoint a temporary chair for the meeting. And so that requires somebody to nominate someone and somebody to second and accept.
I nominate Rick Reitzman to be the chair tonight.
I second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, take a vote to have Rick be the temporary chair for tonight's meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think you're.
Thanks, Rick.
You got a mandate there, Rick.
Okay, look at that. Oh, no.
Or should I say temporary chair? Reitzman?
Yes.
Go ahead and start us off.
Okay. We're going to start right with the public hearing. No.
You better get.
Call to order.
Yeah.
Yes. So I call to order this. This is a workshop, yes?
Correct.
Okay, workshop for the Sisters Planning Commission at 4:32. It looks like we have a quorum. We have 5 commissioners here. And this is a time provided for individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding issues not already on the agenda.
I thought you said regretting issues, and
No,
I regret the
already.
issues quite often, actually.
Yeah. Is there anybody online that wants to?
Okay.
One person online. Eric, do you wish to speak?
He's down the hall.
Well, with that, we'll move on. So we have in front of you the minutes for November 20th of 2025 and December 18th of 2025, Exhibit A and B.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
I will motion to approve the minutes for November 20th and December 18th.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimously. Okay.
Excuse me, Chair Reitzman. I don't know if you skipped over City Council liaison comments, but before we get into the workshop,
There is that.
we're going to give
Okay.
Councilor Preeden an
Yes.
opportunity here.
So, Councilor Preeden, do you have anything you'd like to address us with? Or?
Well, I would like to let you guys know we had a workshop yesterday about 1 o'clock. It was a special workshop that was not on our calendar until recently because we felt like we needed more time on discussing annexation requirements. We had a draft made and discussed some of those items yesterday. And during the meeting, just so you know, you should be very pleased about this. We're having a joint meeting coming up May 7th, I think, and we'll be bringing that up again as well. And we're going to be very interested to hear your guys' take on those annexation requirements and that draft that we have. Because it's a joint meeting, it's going to be an easy time for all of us to talk about it at the same time. But really, one thing that was said by another counselor and was agreed upon by everybody else in a head nod type forum is that we really want you guys to dig into it as well and give us some recommendations because that's what your body does. I mean, and so doesn't seem like we've had one of those situations in a while, so we're really looking forward to hearing what you guys think about what our initial ideas were, but then what maybe new ideas and nuances that you guys might have as well. So when that comes before you, would love to get some solid input from you guys as a body and let us know what you think. And we're going to definitely be hearing it in person when we're meeting at our joint meeting. So.
And that's based on policies and that kind of, that's in the.
Yeah, we started off the process by having staff bring us some other cities' annexation policies and, that are updated. Ashland was one that we seem to like the most, but we also looked at Bend and Redmond because they're close and we went to see if there was anything in there that might work for us as well. And I think what we came up with is our own draft with some pieces from other places, and I should let Scott speak about it more because he's the one that did the work, but we'll be the ones making the final decisions on those policies. And one of the bigger ones is affordable housing. Obviously, that's one of the reasons that we're to have a UGB expansion is so we can get more affordable housing, but it's not the only thing. But it's probably the biggest piece by itself. There's about 9 sections, and the 9th section is affordable housing, and we could have spent 2 more hours on it probably, but it's actually kind of good that we were cut short because, again, we want you guys to go over it as well, and this is going to be a team effort, a team lift, and that's the way the community best benefits is from having more eyes on it and more thoughts, not just ours. So, and I mean that sincerely. I'm not just blowing smoke here. So, although I can if you want me to. Is that the main gist of it, you think? Nothing else going on other than you guys might know that the Adams Streetscape is starting up. I think we're fully funded now, and I think there's going to be some dirt being moved here real soon. So that's exciting. That's a $3.5 million project. So I'm looking forward to seeing that come through. And I think that is going to benefit Sisters a lot more than the public understands. It'll get development going on Adams. It'll be nice. Anybody have any questions for me? I'll just get out of your way and let you do your public hearing. Okay. You guys have a good meeting. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I almost forgot you, which is kind of hard to do, you know. Yeah, yeah, thank you. So today's workshop is going to be talking about the annexation policy. We're going to review the city's policy on annexation to help prepare for the anticipated annexation request as a result of the proposed Sisters Urban Growth Boundary Amendment, which is in Exhibit C of your handout there. No action will be taken at this workshop since it's just a workshop. So I believe this is where I start the script, public hearing script.
Actually, that's later for the 5:30 portion. This is the workshop. The script's for the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
So if you just want to turn it over to me now, I'll take it from here.
Should we turn it? Okay, yes.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about annexation. This is something that important to the city, important to our urban growth boundary amendment process, something that I didn't initially assume that it was going to involve the Planning Commission because our current annexation provisions are in our municipal code. And when the Planning Commission is only in charge of making recommendations on changes to the development code, which is a portion of the municipal code, a component of it. But as this process has evolved, it's become apparent that the changes are most appropriate to take place, to reside in the development code. And so that's why we will be involved in the Planning Commission. I've already had 3 workshops with the council, so we need to catch you guys up quickly on this. And that's the point of today, is to try to give you a little bit of background, a little annexation 101, and then dive, hopefully, if we have time, and depending on how it goes, start getting into a little bit of the details of a draft ordinance that we've put together and that we reviewed with the council yesterday. So I'll just jump right into it if there's no questions, initial questions, but to that point, feel free to jump in at any time with questions. It's meant to be, as usual, an interactive experience. So the agenda today is just a little bit of background on why are we discussing it. Annexation 101. what does our current code say about annexation and our comp plan policies. Take a look, as Councilor Preden said, some examples from some other communities. If we have some time, get into some of the details of the draft ordinance, and then share along the way feedback we've received from council so far on it. So why are we discussing it? You are all aware that we have an application in to expand our urban growth boundary, and once that is adopted, first adopted locally and then acknowledged and accepted by the state, at that point, that means that we can technically start entertaining petitions for annexation. And so we need to have our rules in place the way we want them so that we can start entertaining and reviewing those applications. Hopefully, tentatively we have the schedule for adopting the UGB amendment is this summer, hopefully in July at the latest, but that's tentative. And at that point it'll go to the state, and I imagine it's going to take several months at the state, if not more, to have them finally acknowledge and make it formal. So we have some time, but really want to try to move on this urgently to make sure that we're not behind the eight ball where we have people wanting to annex and we're not done yet. And that's not really a good enough excuse. Is that we're not ready for you. So that's why we're hitting this hard. The other reason is our existing annexation ordinance is just not really up to speed. It's really pretty basic and does not really, it's not going to really achieve what we need. So that's why we need to really beef it up. And does not include any criteria for review, specifically for things such as affordable housing. So this is a little flow chart that kind of helps explain the process that we're in and how we would eventually get to a point where somebody would actually be building out there. I think it's good context for the discussion about annexation, so you kind of understand a little bit about how this goes. It'll maybe make more sense. On the left is you may not be able to read it, but it's the UGB adoption process that we're in. Another component we talked about is the area plan process. And that typically starts after the UGB has been adopted. So we're talking about it, planning behind the scenes right now, but won't really get going publicly facing until later this summer and into the fall, and hopefully get it adopted by the end of the year. Because that's a component you want to have in place too before you start entertaining annexations, because that lays out a lot of information in terms of the expectations for a developer to implement. Annexation agreement is an agreement that is between the city and a petitioner that spells out the terms of the annexation. It's in the past it's a negotiated agreement, more negotiated than I think it is now, where petitioner says, I want this much density and I'm planning on doing this kind of development. And the city would say, well, okay, we need a park over here from you and a new trail in this area and maybe a contribution to public art, just as an example. And then there's a negotiation that goes on, then kind of staff and the petitioner kind of agree to something, and then it goes to the council to approve it. And then they can go to the step of actually requesting annexation. My experience, that negotiation kind of step is not done much anymore. It's in exchange for having clear criteria for what we expect making it a negotiation. There still may be some give and take, but the idea is to be clear and upfront with our criteria and lay out the expectations. And so when somebody gets to that step where they actually want to petition annexation, the way it's laid out in our draft ordinance right now is that you can't just come in with an annexation without a plan. You'd have to have at least a master plan level, which will require some changes to our code, because even though we have a master plan application, the way it's laid out right now doesn't really meet the intent of what we want to achieve with that. So that's an example of, through this process might come out recommendations for amendments to our code to be able to accommodate the kinds of things we want to do. But the idea is that we don't annex property without kind of knowing how much, what their plan is, at least in terms of how much, what kind of land use is it? Is it multifamily? Is it single family? Is it commercial? Is it a little bit of both? Because we want to make sure that it's in compliance with, or brings us the land needs that we have identified already. That's our kind of our check and balance to make sure, you guys remember through the UGB process that we needed 180 acres of residential and 73 acres of employment lands and parklands. That should get wrapped up in the area plan, and when they come to the annexation, that's our check and balance to say, hey, have you provided these things in the proper amounts in the right locations? And if that gets approved, then they'd also get an initial zoning, a city zoning at that point. And they could wrap up subdivision and other approvals at that time too, but they don't have to. They could just go for the master plan, get annexed, and then come back in later for further land use approvals. Does that make sense? Just kind of as a way to kind of give a little overview of the process, and maybe what we talk about will make a little more sense. So what is, maybe a little remedial, but what is annexation? It's a legal process of expanding municipal boundaries to incorporate adjacent unincorporated land into an existing city. It allows property owners to access city services like water, sewer, and police, and subjects the applicable property to city regulations such as city zoning. What governs the annexation? There are some state law that does govern quite a bit of the requirements for annexation, but a local government can adopt additional procedures provided such requirements do not conflict with state statutes. So as we go through this, we're making sure that we're involving our legal staff to ensure that we're in line with state requirements. What lands are eligible to annex? So you have to be in the urban growth boundary, and you can see in the map the blue area would be is the area that we've proposed to expand to. So number one, you'd have to be in that area, and number two, you'd have to be contiguous to the existing city boundary to be able to annex. In other words, you can't leapfrog over a property that hasn't been annexed. And so, yeah, contiguous means it could be up next to a property, or you could be separated by a city street or a stream, potentially, counts. Who may initiate an annexation? Proposal may be initiated by the legislative body of the city on its own motion, which is more rare, or by a petition to the legislative body by owners of the property in the territory. That's, typically the city does not go out and annex property. It waits for property owners or developers on behalf of property owners petitioning the city to annex. What's the process currently? Chapter 1.25 of the code guides annexation now. It says council may authorize an annexation election as required by the city charter upon a written request. It talks about providing the information necessary to place the annexation question on the ballot and adequate review for the request of annexation. Council may hold hearings or other action required by state law for annexation either prior to or following the annexation election. That's pretty much all there is in the code about annexation. And a lot of people, in fact, every annexation I think that we've had to date, I think the last one was in 2013 or 14, the airport. It was done by city vote. And so even though that's in our rules and it was kind of the way it was done in a lot of places, that has since been usurped, I guess, by state law in that it's no longer allowed to have cities, the electorate, vote on annexations as of about 2016. So even though it's in our charter, it does say unless mandated by state law. So no, that's a change of practice from the last time we did an annexation in Sisters. What does that say? Yeah, basically this is the bill that limited the requirements, or limited voting requirements in local charters. So I think I talked about an annexation agreement, what that is. It's basically a binding agreement. What's an example of some of the things that are in agreements? One of the last ones was the Mackenzie Meadows Village, the original Mackenzie Meadows Village over by the high school. When they annexed, they had requirements for housing, affordable housing, water rights, that the water rights that they may have had on the property would be relinquished to the city. And at that time, land for a senior center, parks, and other similar requirements. So those are some examples of things that could be in an annexation agreement. What does the comprehensive plan say about annexation? It talks about promoting efficient development within the UGB to accommodate forecasted housing and employment growth, minimize cost of providing public services and infrastructure, protect resource land outside of the UGB, and maintain community livability. And then it also talks about ensuring annexed land meets city needs for adequate public facilities and affordable housing. So that provides some of the basis for our annexation policy. So one thing that we do a lot when we talk about establishing or revising our code is looking at other communities for examples, ideally comparable communities that are small and tourist oriented and experiencing a lot of growth. Well, there aren't a whole lot of great examples out there in Oregon that are exactly the same as Sisters because we're unique. So it does become challenging to find direct comparables to what's going on here. So sometimes we kind of expand a little bit beyond that. One that we were sort of tipped off to about that I was unaware of, but tipped off to about by some of our other land use professionals was Ashland's ordinance because of the council's stated goal of requiring affordable housing with an annexation, and that was made known as one of the better, or one of the few, I guess, and one of the better had the better standards in the state for. Not a great deal of communities have this kind of thing in their ordinance, but they do. And so these are some of the criteria that they have in their ordinance in addition to the housing, but obviously want to make sure they have adequate provision of water, sewer, and storm drainage, adequate transportation, and that's not just for vehicular, but it's pedestrian, bicycle, and transit. That they require a plan demonstrating minimum densities, meeting their density goals, and then affordable housing. They require 25% of the base density as affordable units. So if you had 100, I call them free market units as opposed to affordable units. Free market units being no restrictions on them in terms of who can buy. You had 100 units, then 25, they would be required 25 units of affordable housing along with it. So that's 125 basically units to provide. They have a sliding scale on units where you get a little bit of credit if you go below. This actually doesn't show it all, but I think from 80 to 60 to, or 80 below, 80% below, you get like a 1.25 unit credit. And if you do 80 to 100, I think it's just it's a 1-to-1. And if you hit the higher end of the area median income, you get a little bit of a penalty, I guess. The thinking is that, I think on their part, is that if you didn't have that, developers would just try to hit the high end of the AMI because they can recoup the highest amount of sale price or rent from those units, which is fine. We need some of those units, but we also need units in the lower end of the spectrum too. And that's their way of kind of encouraging a variety of units. And that's something that council wrestled with yesterday is how do you get a variety of units? And basically stepping back from that farther is what units do we really need in our community, and make sure that we draw up the ordinance to make sure that we get the units that we need. And so that's a step that we need to kind of take. There's some information in our housing needs analysis that were the original 2019, I think, that had some information that really kind of broke down the different categories of how many units we needed based on our demographics and and our average sale price of homes. So maybe we can take that and update it because we don't want developers just throwing out units that aren't really meeting the need in the community. So something we need to work on. Their ordinance allows a developer to either build the units themselves or to transfer some land that could be built by an affordable housing developer, like say a Habitat, or they could even give it to the city if they wanted to, if they didn't want to build them, and then that developer would be required to build them. So there's also some requirements for the timing of the delivery of the units. We don't want those to be, phase 10. The affordable units get built like in 10 years after all the other units are built. There's some requirements in there that they can get started with the free market units earlier, but at some point, a certain percentage that when those go for certificate of occupancy, they have to have the building permits for a certain percentage of the affordable units in order to make sure that they more or less track alongside each other. And then there's one of the discussions that the council's had is whether the units need to be or can be clustered or whether they should be dispersed throughout the development. Obviously, with multifamily, it's hard to disperse units. They're kind of are what they are. But if they had multiple requirements for multifamily, maybe one multifamily building is in one spot and the other building is separated reasonably apart from that, or if there's say cottage units or something like that, then maybe there's we haven't figured out how to codify this yet, but how do you get that, how do you achieve that goal in a code? Questions at any time if you have them, or if you're just soaking it all in, that's fine too.
Did it work for Ashland, this 25%?
Yeah, well, I called the planning director down there to kind of see how it was going, and they've had these requirements in place for 30 years.
30?
30 years, yeah. It's only netted them 150 affordable units, but I think that's more indicative of the growth rates down there. I guess they are not growing quite as fast as Central Oregon, but
Or maybe it's creating a problem.
he didn't seem. I asked him that question. And
Yeah.
It's like, does this deterring people from doing it? He didn't think so.
Yeah.
It's something that's well known in the community, so it's not like it's a surprise. Developers that are going forward are well aware of the requirements. So far, at least to him, it didn't seem like it was a deterrent. That was the reason that maybe growth was a little slower. There may have been other reasons for that.
Is 25% aggressive, or I have no concept of where it lies?
I think I've heard of 30% requirements, and I've heard of 10%. I think.
Weren't we 10 for a long time?
Yeah, when we did McKenzie Meadows Village annexation back in 2007, I think, there was a 10% requirement for that. So kind of gives you an idea of where communities are at. They've made some tweaks to things as time has gone on based on feedback that they get, but it's an interesting example. Here's the kind of some of the feedback that we got from them. Getting mostly multifamily units, some townhomes, mostly rental, and I don't think they specify, ownership or rental. They just seem to entertain whatever is proposed. I think the council here is encouraged to get, or wants to get a little bit more specificity in terms of a mix. I think we need a mix in this community based on some of our studies. Not everybody needs housing. Not everybody wants for sale housing. Some people, rental housing, is not what they want because they want to lay down some roots in the community. So, yes.
On that last slide, it said that affordability
was required for 60 years. So in the Ashland example, that's meaning that after 60 years, they could become free market units. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, and that's a certainly discussion item for us as well. Habitat is, their units are perpetual, or 99 years. Our affordable housing grant fund, I think, requires only 10 or 15. So there's some discussion on, how long that should be. There's some people that think they should be perpetual because there's a lot of expenditure of effort and sometimes tax money to help support that. It should be permanently affordable. But there's different schools of thought on that. And we looked at Ben's ordinance, and the council really liked the layout of Ben's ordinance because it had a purpose section, applicability, had review procedures, laid out the initiation procedures, submittal requirements, and approval criteria. And examples of some of their approval criteria were consistency with comp plan policies, the transportation planning rule, and adopted area plan, adequate public services and facilities to serve the area, and then plans to mitigate for any of those anticipated impacts to those facilities. And then, as I mentioned, transfer of water rights or irrigation rights. That's pretty typical with an annexation, is that you would request transfer of water rights from the land that you're annexing in, because those water rights are used to help provide more city water to help serve those areas. So if they have water rights on their property, they need to transfer them over. If they don't have any, they can go find some and transfer them, or we're thinking that they could pay a fee in lieu, an equivalent amount to help the city, and that might help fund a new well in this area to help kind of serve these areas. And then there's a requirement that when you go to zone annexed areas, that the implementing zone district of the comp plan designation will automatically apply upon annexation, and the one that will be in place prior to that will cease to apply. So, you're going to have a comprehensive plan designation on the properties that might be residential, high density, which would maybe equate to our multifamily residential zone when we actually apply a zone to it at annexation. Looked at Redmond's. There's some good stuff to pull out of there in terms of the requirements for master plan at the time of annexation, but pretty similar stuff. Medford, we looked at that one. It didn't. It's fine, but it didn't really have anything that stood out to us. Some of the council feedback we've had so far is wanting to make sure we get it right. We could potentially have, a situation where we don't have small lot owners coming in individually, but we have several big master plans, and you only get one chance to get those right. So we want to make sure we have all the requirements in place the way we want. So they said, let's do this right. Want to have it in place by the time the UGB is adopted. Support affordable housing requirements. They generally liked Ashland's example. They want input from the affordable housing developers. I've done that so far. I've at least reached out to Habitat because they do the most work in the community, and got some really good feedback from their executive director, Peter Hoover. There's some other ones in the community. We talked about reaching out to Northwest Housing Alternatives because they do multifamily. And probably at some point want to get some feedback from developers who would actually implement this. We want to get the whole perspective. And one thing that we did talk about yesterday was with the Ashland example, it only applies to residential development because it's based on the number of residential units. So that begs the question of what do we do with employment lands or industrial projects or commercial projects that don't have any residential. They are creating demand for employees and putting pressure on our housing situation. And so there was some discussion about that. They obviously aren't going to build units on an industrial property. We don't want them to do that. So the discussion was maybe a fee in lieu, or possibly a construction excise tax that would help to fund development of affordable housing to offset that that impact somewhere else. A construction excise tax is something that's been implemented. You can implement them in Oregon. They've been implemented in Bend and Redmond. Redmond's, I think, in the last 3 or 4 years. They only apply to commercial industrial development. Basically, the way it works is it's a percentage of the value of the somebody comes in for a building permit. It's the value of the building permit, a percentage of that. It's usually like 1% or something pretty small, but those go into a fund that the city could, an affordable housing fund that the city could use to find opportunities similar to what we did with Northwest Housing Alternatives. We got that $500,000, luckily, from the county through the ARPA funds that we were able to help find eventually NHA, Northwest Housing Alternatives, and a site over at the Wellhouse Church that turned into that project. $500,000. What's that?
You could use it to backfill SDCs.
Yeah, whatever they want to use it for. Kind of, it's not enough to build affordable housing by itself, but they certainly found it valuable, and it was a reason. The fact that we had that $500,000 to offer was one of the big reasons why they chose to even develop here. Because it helps leverage projects that they got their funding, their state funding, as well as some other funding sources to help make that project happen. So, but those don't happen without a pot of money to help do that. And then the question is, where does that come from? So that's one of the discussions that council started chewing on yesterday. Some were concerned about the impact that might have on our economic development, and want to make sure it's not too steep, that that it's a deterrent to that. They also want right-sized requirements to get the needed housing without too much of a burden. As I mentioned, they want to know the types of affordable housing units we need and build that into the ordinance. One discussion that came up yesterday that Councilor Preeden actually brought up was wanting the option for somebody to annex without development. And I hadn't really thought about that before. It's not, I think it's a little unorthodox, because we usually don't want to annex somebody in unless we know that it's going to meet our city needs.
What would be the use case that he's talking about?
What would be the case?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of them was, it was a good point that say there are property owners that aren't contiguous to the city boundary that want to develop, but they can't because there's another property owner that's in the way, and they're not ready to develop. So they may encourage that person to petition to annex the city, even though they're not ready, just so they could get into the city and then create that contiguity. So it would unlock some other properties. That might be a reason why to do it. So something we'll take a look at as an option. It would only be if it met a city goal, a defined city goal. Because otherwise, just in general practice, I don't think that's something that we want to do. Annex without a development, if there's not a good reason to do so.
Scott, when would the city initiate an annexation?
When would the city initiate annexation?
If
Potentially, I think we can when a property like there's a donut hole in the urban growth boundary and it's completely surrounded by annexed lands. I think that's one area where we could annex a property. Potentially, if we need right of way for something, say this arterial we're talking about, and there's some properties that aren't ready to develop, and we need to make a connection. Like there's been some talk about this arterial that might connect from the end of Barclay through the UGB site and connect to 126. At some point it's going to be necessary because we won't be able to keep putting traffic to the roundabout over here. And at some point it might stop development if we don't get that connection. And if they don't want to, those property owners aren't ready to, maybe that's an example of when we would try to annex to get the right of way.
Yeah. So does the city buy that land from the property owner?
Well,
How does that?
it's probably just I mean, I think the optimum way to do it would just be to annex it and then to request right away from there and just keep it privately owned. But
Okay.
I mean, that we'd much rather work with the property owner. Wouldn't want to do it against against their will. So maybe there's a public health kind of situation where, you know, there's a septic or leach field or whatever, it's failed out there and it's causing a public health issue. You know, maybe that's a purpose for the city to go out and annex a property or that. Yeah, good question.
But all the same annexation rules would apply to the city in terms of being contiguous.
Yeah. Yes. As far as I know. Okay, so how are we doing on time here? We got about 20 more minutes before we were planning. What was the last one? Oh, there was, you know, do all properties that come in for annexation need to do a master plan? And we've written in some exemptions to the master plan, like say if the school came in with their annexation, they wouldn't require a master plan, or if it was for some other situations. But say a 2-acre parcel wanted to come in, you know, are we really going to require a master plan for that? You know, it's probably not.
Under a certain size?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. 5 acres, 10 acres, we don't know. Yeah. So what are the next steps here? Getting this thing to the finish line. We'll take the time that's necessary. If this schedule's too ambitious, then and we need the extra time, we'll take it. But like I said, we've had 3 workshops with the council already. This is the first one with the Planning Commission, so you guys are just getting a taste of this. And so I want to make sure that you guys get the proper time to understand it and have your input. Councilor Predin talked about a joint meeting on the 7th with the Planning Commission. We have a couple topics we wanted to bring up to propose, including annexation. But we also want to leave that free flow, because I think last time, Council President McDougall made sure that emphasized yesterday that this will be an opportunity for you guys to speak, and I don't think you had that opportunity as much last time. I think that was some feedback that we got from you guys, and want to make sure they're aware of that. So it's really to be a dialogue, and want to hear from you guys. So if you have some topics that you want to bring up, think about that. It's an opportunity, a 2-hour meeting, to have some back and forth, but an opportunity to talk a little bit about annexation, and maybe we can kind of focus a little bit on housing and kind of hear what that seems to be the focal point of this, or the kind of the area where it needs most attention is the affordable housing part. But that the next, if that goes well, then May 27th would be another opportunity for the Planning Commission to have a workshop, and then June 4th we have tentatively designated for another workshop with Planning Commission on this topic. If we're ready, then we would go forward with the public hearing on June 18th with the Planning Commission, and potentially July 8th or August 12th with the City Council if it goes all smoothly. But we have some room. You know, say it goes to the Planning Commission on the 18th, and there's a need to continue it for more discussion, we can certainly do that. Any questions on it? We got 15 more minutes. I was prepared to even dive into some of the details, more of the details if you want to, or if you want to stop there and take a break before the hearing. We can go either way. What would you guys like to do?
We need a little break before the hearing.
Yeah. Okay. 5:14, 5:15 now. You want to take a 15-minute break and start?
Let's go ahead and start. This is time set for a public hearing on City File Number TA 26-01, an application for housekeeping text amendments for the Sisters Development Code submitted by City of Sisters. The meeting is now called to order. He told me not to say gavel. I had to hit it. Conduct of hearing. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. Staff will make a presentation and commissioners may ask questions of staff. Entry of additional correspondence received into record. Opening of public hearing for testimony in the following order. Testimony in support of the proposal, testimony in opposition of the proposal, and neutral testimony. Questions of staff, if any, by the Planning Commission. Closed public testimony portion of the hearing, no further testimony. Discussion and decision by the Planning Commission. Testimony. Testimony will be accepted in person and remotely by Zoom. If you would like to speak, please provide your testimony after you are called. I have to read it here still, even though no one's there. If you do not wish to provide testimony, please say no testimony after you are called. If any question should be directed to me as chair, when you testify, please state your name and address for the record, and please speak clearly and loudly to ensure testimony is heard, as this hearing will be recorded. Callers will be muted after their testimony concludes. At my discretion, I may limit testimony to 3 minutes per person. I would encourage those wishing to speak to keep testimony concise and relevant to the issue before us this evening. It is encouraged to simply agree with a point made by another person instead of remaking that same point. For deliberation and applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. These are the criteria the Planning Commission must use in making its decision. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or other land use regulations that the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Testimony that is not directed towards applicable or potentially applicable approval criteria, even if its strong point is ultimately not relevant. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity, that's easy for me to say, to afford the Planning Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Planning Commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the Planning Commission to provide further opportunity to present additional relevant evidence or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. At this time, I'll ask any commissioner if any commissioner has any conflicts of interest, and if so, please disclose the nature of that conflict and whether the member believes the conflict would preclude the member from objectively participating in these proceedings. We'll just go down the row here.
Nope.
I have no conflicts.
No conflict of interest.
I have none.
I have no conflicts of interest.
Great. Does anybody want to challenge that that's in the audience? Great. Okay, now is the time for the staff to present their report.
Thank you, Chair Retzman. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Thank you for having me. My name is Sarah Vowell. I am the Associate Planner for the City of Sisters. This evening, we're going to be talking about file number TA 2601, which is a package of text amendments to the Sisters Development Code that corrects errors, updates references, and provides clarification to criteria and standards. A little background on this: these amendments were started by staff in February, and 2 weeks ago, on April 2nd, we met with the Planning Commission for a workshop. Our current timeline is that we've completed the Planning Commission workshop. We are at the Planning Commission public hearing. If the Planning Commission so chooses to recommend these for approval, we have some tentative dates set with City Council. So City Council workshop on May 27th and a potential public hearing for adoption of the amendments on June 10th. The purpose of these amendments is not to create, modify, or remove standards. It is not to substantively change the intent of the code. It is only to update, I cannot move my Zoom screen, to update code references, fix spelling and grammatical errors, and to correct outline issues. And I've got some examples there that you've seen before. And I am going to walk through a few more examples of exhibits, but this presentation is only intended to be supplemental and to summarize the staff report that is included in the packet. Here is a list of the exhibits that you have in your packet. And then here are some themes we've identified. So all of the code amendments will fall into these categories. So grammar and spelling, outline and reference updates, and then code structure and clarity. On to the examples for you. So attachment A seeks to correct a spelling error to the word amphitheater. Attachment F seeks to correct the tense in that second sentence there. So it's currently singular, it should be plural. We have a lot of outline corrections in the packet before you. These are small changes, but they're important to the people that administer the code and use the code, because when we have to reference it to one another, it very quickly gets confusing and distracting if these are incorrect. So for example, in attachment B in Pine Meadow Village, we have 2 Bs. So now we will have an A, a B, and a C. And in attachment J, those are capital letters, but they should be lowercase. For reference updates, an example I have before you is in the signs chapter. So right now we currently reference the building official as someone who could go out and inspect unsafe or insecure signs. The City of Sisters does not have a building official on staff, but rather we contract those services through Deschutes County. Changing this reference from building official to community development director will allow additional staff on the city, like our code enforcement officer, to go out and look at signs, but it also retains the ability of the building official for Deschutes County. If they were in town and wanted to look at it, they would also be allowed to do that. Some more reference updates for you. In attachment K, we worked with Deschutes County Building Safety Division, the building official, to update that standard where we incorrectly referenced the Oregon Structural Specialty Code. If we change this to all applicable state building codes, that will correct the error and also help us going forward in the future should the name change of those codes again. And then in attachment L, we have an outline correction, so that B should be a C, but also we don't use the terminology decision authority anywhere else in the code, but we do use the terminology review authority, so we want to switch that. Attachment L has a great example of code restructuring. Throughout the landscaping and screening standards, there are sections that are relevant to the parking areas, but they're kind of sprinkled all over. So this seeks to combine them and put them in one spot so that it's easier to use. So you'll see that 9 became A, and then the paragraph after parking areas became B, but nothing changed, it just got reordered. In attachment F, we would like to move formula food establishments, E, from underneath the use table to up above in line with the rest of the criteria to try and draw attention to that, because right now it sits under the use tables. Attachment C and E are examples of code clarity. Currently, landscaping is applicable to all new developments within the city, but it is something that often gets overlooked and missed in application packages. So we'd like to add a reference to the development standards of those districts that directs the applicant to go look at those landscaping standards. Attachment J is another good example of code clarity. Right now, we have home occupations that require a type 1 review, and a home occupation is something that brings customers to the home. They might have signage, they will have additional vehicles on site, they might have deliveries, but we also have home-based businesses that don't have that impact and intensity. So people like your day traders, your customer service representatives, or your remote workers that are in their house and they have no outward appearance of being a home occupation. They don't necessarily rise to the level of needing a type 1 review, but without this exemption clarity, it's a little difficult to read in between those lines. Attachment J seeks to add a map or an illustrative depiction of the disallowed area for temporary uses, just as a visual guide for anyone who's considering starting a temporary use in the city. And then I have 2 updates for you. So on this previous exhibit, we were concerned that you couldn't read the street names. I did want to point out that they're there. But the exhibit that I have before this is so zoomed out that it makes them really hard to read. They're there. I wanted to make sure you guys saw that. And then the other update was a great catch by all of you. So we had originally in this section A, B, C, and D, but it actually needs to be A, 1, 2, 3 because of the colon after the A. So thank you for that. Our next steps in this public hearing, you have several options that include continuing the hearing or closing the hearing. And then your potential recommendation options would be as drafted with amendments or to deny them. What questions do you have for me?
I have no questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Want to just read into the record if number 6 on correspondence?
Yes. Have we received any correspondence in this matter other than those items indicated in the agenda materials?
We have not.
Okay. Questions of staff. At this time, I will ask each commissioner whether they have any questions for staff. Questions will be stated by each commissioner. Staff will respond after each question and that has been asked by the commissioners. When your name is called, please ask your questions or indicate that you have no questions.
I don't have any questions.
No questions.
No questions.
I have none.
No questions.
You did a really good job at the workshop. That really
Good.
set the stage
Thank
for
you.
tonight. Okay, so public testimony. We now invite members of the audience to provide testimony. When called, please come forward and state your name and address for the record before proceeding with your testimony. When your name or number is called, please indicate whether or not you will be providing testimony. For those attending via Zoom, we will conduct a roll call to see who wants to provide testimony. Is there anybody on Zoom? Eric, do you have anything you would like to say?
He never does, right?
Okay. Do I need to go through this whole thing?
You might want to just note that there's no members of the
there's
public.
no,
No members of the public in
No
attendance.
public, so we don't have to do the proponents and all those. Questions for clarification. Does any member of the planning commission have any further questions of staff? Okay. So, we either can close or continue this hearing. If continued, the terms in the schedule will be determined in real time. If there are no further questions, I will close the public testimony portion of this hearing, and the public testimony portion of this hearing is now closed. So now it's time for our planning commission deliberations. We now have closed the hearings and must deliberate towards a decision. Our opinions are to recommend approval as proposed, approval with changes, or denial. When your name is called, please provide your thoughts for the proposed amendments, and what decision you are inclined to make. I will continue going through the order until there are no further deliberations or until a motion is made, so that you will have an opportunity to respond and or adjust your thoughts based on testimony of your fellow commissioners. Do you have any?
I'm just going to say that the workshop was really helpful, and I appreciate you highlighting the updates that you made. But yeah, I would recommend to approve it.
Yeah, I agree with Julia. I feel like we had a very thorough review of it before, and everything looks good, so I'm in support of moving forward.
You set the foundation really good for this. If rest of our staff could, no. So, we need to have a motion for a decision. What is the pleasure of the commission? Do I have a motion?
I motion
And
to,
if you look on the back of your,
yeah. I move to recommend to City Council approval of City File TA 2601 as drafted by staff.
is there a second for that?
Second that.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. That's it.
We have to say the
Thank you.
motions.
Yes, yeah, it was approved unanimously.
Awesome. Well done, Rick.
So with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Just
Oh.
staff and commissioner comments is the last part of
Oh, yes,
the
staff and
agenda.
commissioner comments. You guys have any additional comments, maybe even what's not here on the agenda? Anything for the good of the order? Staff?
Any fun new permits?
Fun new premise? Find fun. They're all fun to say. Yeah, just that our next meeting will be on the 7th of May. And the full,
Oh, yeah, I guess I could make a comment, which is, I'll probably see you guys all in July. Depending on when somebody decides to show up, but all of our meetings seem to be kind of around my due date.
When is their appointment?
Yeah, when is their appointment?
When is what?
You know, the
May
appoint-
12th. So,
I was trying to be more official appointment. Yeah. When's the appointed time?
yeah, when is the appointed time?
May 12th?
Yeah, so probably July, you'll see me again, hopefully.
Right on.
Perfect.
Have a great break.
Yeah.
Sleep when the baby sleeps.
Yeah.
Sleeping
Yeah,
a lot
sleep
when
while
the
you
baby's
can.
That's what I learned.
Short chunks.
Okay. That I will adjourn.
Thank you.
We haven't done a public hearing in a long time.
Can I ask an unofficial question?
It was good to have the
I think it's unofficial.
practice